Sometimes the bravest thing that you can do is pause.
That is true leadership doesn't begin with leading or directing others, but it starts with leading ourselves.
I'm My Holland, and you're listening to Mosaic Mind. Sometimes the bravest thing that you can do is pause. Not because you have failed or lost momentum, but because you're growing into a version of yourself the world has not seen yet. Dr. Tran Thi Ngoc Tran calls herself a catalyst in transition. After 20 years of leadership in inclusive education and advisory roles across institutions like Fulbright University, Girl Rising, and the IFC of the World Bank Group, she made a bold decision to slow down, to reflect, and to rebuild with more intention than ever before. Along the way, she completed a PhD in leadership, where her research gave voice to rarely heard group, agrarian women navigating climate change. Her findings that these women, so often invisible, are already leading through crisis, with resilience, activity, and a quiet power that challenges our definition of leadership. Tang is an edu-preneur, mentor, a daughter, and a woman in renewal. And today she joins us to talk about what it means to lead with the heart, to find strength in softness, and to keep showing up when the world is on fire. I'm My Holland, and you're listening to Mosaic Mind, where we uncover the layered lives of leaders who think differently, lead deeply, and live fully. If you find meaning in today's conversation, don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave us a review. It helps others discover stories that deserve to be heard. Welcome, Em. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Jay?
It's so fantastic. We're calling in the same country, so we're not too far from each other for once. So I think we have been knowing each other for quite a few years now. And I think that the first time when I met you, it was really, through a gender project, and which was fascinating. So we're absolutely following. I love your work. I'm in awe with what you're doing. So I really want to share your story to the people who are listening to this podcast today. So we are very curious. You mentioned that word that I have never heard before, catalyst in transition. So you call yourself that. Can you tell me, so what does it mean to you right now, and how is it guiding you? How is it for you to show up in this world these days?
Thank you, Jay, for the interesting question. Throughout my life, I have had many experiences that shaped me. Some joyful, others painful. And each experience has been like a seed planted along my path. Let me give you an example. In 2022, I returned to Vietnam after a fellowship. And you may remember that was the COVID period. And at the COVID isolation center, I spent 2 weeks there just reading constant bad news about the virus, the economic downturn, and the new normal. And I felt uncertain, unsure how we would get through it all or how I could lead in such a time. Or recently, I have to face the most difficult time in my life when I lost my dearest mom in a very unexpected way. So I think in today's fast changing and uncertain world, I often found myself needing to pause just to catch my breath, to reflect, and to gather the strength to keep moving forward. And I think that these moments of stillness have taught me something profound about leadership. That is, true leadership doesn't begin with leading or directing others, but it starts with leading ourselves. And this realization shaped my understanding of what I mentioned, or I describe myself as the catalyst in transition. So for me, it is all about the transformative power of intentional pause. And pausing in this term is not about stepping back. It is about stepping inward. And it is in this quiet space that renewal begins. So it is where we unlearn what no longer serves us and relearn what matters most to us. That is my thinking. So when I mention myself at the catalyst and transition, I think that is the important shift in my life that allows me to rise stronger and then pass that strength on for many people.
I'm so happy you mentioned this, because we're always on that treadmill. We're thinking about going forward, making more money and everything. And then suddenly, as you shared, your mom passed away. And I recall when you shared it with me months ago, it's not expected, it's tragic. And you learned so much in those times when you're looking inward, exactly what you said. And I think there is that self-leadership that you mentioned about that concept of really pausing and looking inward is just such a rare skills that we want to look because we constantly look for more external things. So looking into what you just said, can you let us know a little bit more, what gave you the courage to step off the treadmill, so what quality, that you need to step off the treadmills for other people as well who's listening here. So what kind of advice can you give them? And how does it change your definition of success as well? Because like people think of success as, moving forward and not
Yeah,
pausing. But what is it
yeah.
for you?
I appreciate the opportunity to share with you my experience and what I learned from that process. Because stepping back from like formal leadership title and position is not easy at all. I started like leadership position when I was very young, at around 26 years old. So in my time, that is like very early career transition. And then since then, for me, leadership is about constant push forward. But actually, the lessons about COVID, about personal loss, as I shared with you before, taught me that leadership must be a cycle of reflection, restoration, and growth. And the more grounded we are in our own journey of transition, the more authentic and resilient our leadership becomes. So we have to first lead ourselves with clarity about what we want, who we want to become, with courage and with compassion. Then we become better equipped to guide others through their own moments of change. And as an educator, I think that this is very important for me. So how can I step down from that treadmill, as in your term? I think that it changed me a lot after the personal loss, but also in November, just a month after my mother passed away, and I traveled to Bangalore for an international conference. I want to share this story before I share my experience how to step down or how to step inward. I traveled to Bangalore for an international conference, and on the first day, a dear friend of mine who is an educational leader in India waited for me at the entrance. And she handed me a small bundle of incense and said gently, "I know you have a prayer for your mom every evening, and I hope this small bundle of incense helps." So this small gesture touched me deeply. And it again reminded me that leadership is not just about titles or results. It's about presence, compassion, and being there for others when they need. And at that moment, I just realized that I have to be pausing intentionally, just to look at myself, to reflect on the experience that I have been engaging for so many years, just to selectively continue my journey, maybe in different roles to expand my impact. So I think to answer your question, yes, we need to recognize small acts and learn from those small acts to make it like our own thought, our own habits. And I think that is very important. As I mentioned before, when you can lead yourself with clarity and with courage, you can also lead others or impact others in so many positive.
Absolutely. I'm hearing word of wisdom here. So thank you very much for sharing. And, that small gesture, which is very symbolic, actually has a lot of impact, and she was mindful just to show her, to show you her compassion, into that moment of your life. So talking about impact, you have done a lot of research and you are really looking into climate leadership. Your PhD research really focuses on women farmers, so in Vietnam, dealing with climate change. So can you let us know a little bit more about, maybe one most eye-opening thing that you have discovered in those conversations with those women?
So before that, I want to share with you a bit about the context of the rural women and why I'm interested in doing a research for them and with them. Because rural women play a vital role in maintaining the household. Just like every woman in the world, right? But for rural women, they have to play that role through food preparation, through home care, through cropping, and also through disaster recovery. But social norms and also gender expectation in the rural area often limit their participation in crisis, or particularly in climate adaptation effort, and leaving them at a disadvantage. And while women resilient capabilities like vary widely, I think there's still limited research exploring livelihood resilience from the women's perspective, especially in the rural area or in disadvantaged areas. And that's why I'm interested in my research to understand how the rural women perceive household livelihood resilience, because we can just support them or we can just improve their livelihood when we understand their perception. That should be from them and for them, and what support they feel is needed to strengthen their livelihood resilience. So if you ask me about the interesting finding in my research, actually there are so many, but I just picked two findings that I think I want to share in this conversation. The first one is about the women's awareness of climate change. As a leader or advocate, we are mentioning a lot about climate change everywhere, in the newspaper, in media, in everywhere, right? But in my research, when I talk with the women in rural area, particularly in An Giang and Sóc Trăng in the Mekong Delta, they show awareness of changing climate patterns and more frequent extreme weather. And they know that these changes disrupted their daily life, causing the rice crop losses, the water shortage, reduce their labor productivity, their health issue, and emotional distress. They know that. But most of them couldn't clearly identify climate change as the root cause.
Okay.
Yeah. So many responded with uncertainty, like, I don't know, or they blame natural disaster is the cause. But actually, that is not the root cause. Only one woman can mention the word climate change. And we think that this limited awareness led to short-term individual level responses, mostly grounded in traditional practices and lacking long-term and strategic adaptive strategies because of their limited awareness of climate change as a whole. That is one finding. And when we ask about what the support they really need. So they say like training was frequently mentioned as a critical need. So one woman said that we need training on new farming techniques. And another also shared that without knowledge, we are just guessing how to survive. Guessing how to survive. It's very interesting answer. So these responses reflect a strong desire for capacity building for themselves to lead their household, to lead their livelihood. But aside from training, this is very interesting. The second most common request for support was just a general need for support without specifying what kind of support they need. And this suggests that while women recognize future challenges, they often lack clarity on what resources are available and how to articulate their specific needs. So it is about the voice and how to express the needs. And I think that this is not for rural women. This is for us as well. That is when we have to, we need to step inward to really understand to what extent we understand the core, the issue, the problem, and then what specific kind of support that we really need. And that is how about we articulate the desire of support. So these are the two findings that I want to share.
So you're talking about them not being aware and not being pinpointed, making the link with climate issues. What mindset or habits do you believe that, those women need in order to lead through climate uncertainty? What mindset of habits really do you think that they need? What is missing?
I think that they lack of information resource.
Okay.
And because our practices, the intervention doesn't start from them. And that's why to have a more effective intervention, we have to co-create the solution with them. And it should starting from the lack of understanding, the lack of awareness. And these lack of awareness or understanding should be spoken by the women. So their voice should be heard as the first step, right? So overall, for my research, I think the rural women demonstrated some level of livelihood resilience because they also share with us their adaptation approaches. But mostly, this is like rely on individual responses, grounded from traditional practices that they learn from their mother, from their grandmother, something like that. But their and then that's why their ability to adapt and transform remains limited. And again, this is closely tied to their vague understanding of climate change to identify the strategies needed to cope with. Yeah, so that's why I want to share with you this Friday because I realized that this is quite aligned with my definition of leadership, which valued the women's voice and also like meaningful participation in every choices or in every decision. We always see like they are the beneficiary of the intervention. But I think that we should need to transform our mindset a little bit to make them as an active agents of change and to co-create a solution with them.
Yeah. Well, that's also very impactful what you're doing. And I really want to link with what you have just shared now with your other work, which is about education. So you're an educator and edu-preneur. So you work across many, many, many spaces from the Vietnam National Uni to the IFC, the World Bank Group, to Fulbright. So what is it that you have learned about what it really takes to create an inclusive learning environment, especially for women and girls? So how hopeful are you about education today? What's your view? It's a big question.
From different positions in different institutions, from academia to nonprofit to business, in different roles like co-founder, director, and consultant. I realized that learning is not just about acquiring knowledge. This is a dynamic process of educating, engaging, and creating impact. And that is the essence of inclusive education. Because if you want to educate, engage someone, and then enable them to create impact on their life and also the life of others. So the process of learning should be about awakening self-awareness, fostering meaningful connection, and then creating an enabling environment so that they can apply what they learn to drive transformation. So as I mentioned, I'm an entrepreneur and I don't just deliver knowledge, but I will focus on co-create learning experience with and for the learners. So it is not about women or disadvantaged youth. It is for everyone. Everyone need that process. And that's why in every program I'm part of, I always focus on three core pillars. There's three C's. The first one is capacity, then building the skills, and then equipping them with the tools needed to grow. That is the first one. The second one is the community. So nurturing the sense of belonging, the collaboration, and the shared purpose of the community that the learner belong to. These two pillars will create the third C, the confidence. So the learner can trust themselves and then they can lead with purpose and with intention. That is where no one is left behind. That is from my learning and also my experience.
And I'm learning as well today. So thank you. That is it's wonderful, to be able to share about, the link between what you just said before, with the learning here, the learning of the mindset before, but also, that intention and purpose that, you just mentioned now. We talked about women because, it's one of our area of focus, obviously. So you talk a lot, in your work, I'm hearing women empowerment. So you said that, so women often receive support, but they don't always know how to ask for it, or maybe give it meaningfully. So what is it? How have you personally navigated the balance between receiving and giving support? How tricky is that fine line?
I think it is very important to take advantage of the support systems. And let me share with you, I think that I mentioned with you this story in a cafe
Yes.
recently, but I want to mention this again in this conversation just to frame how I can balance what you just asked. My mom midwife who later became like a full-time housewife. Always been like great source of inspiration for me because through her kindness and her humility and her quiet strength, she's taught me my very first lesson in leadership. And I want to share this story shared by a hairdresser who visited us after my mother passed away. Every New Year, my mother would send the hairdresser a handwritten greeting card. Not many people did that. In our culture, it is common to give lisi, right? Lucky money as gestures of celebration. But my mother went beyond tradition, and she gave not just money, but heartfelt wishes. And that small act made the hairdresser feel seen, respected, and deeply appreciated. That is for me the essence of leadership, like making people feel valued, cared for, and better about themselves. So how can I balance being a beneficiary and an agent of change? That is your questions, right? Yeah. So that is when I can create and then maintain an environment for myself to feel valued, to be seen, and to be appreciated. Yeah. So if you think that you have contribution to that community, you feel like you can raise your voice to ask for what you need. Because at the end of the day, when you have your need fulfilled or satisfied, you will like pay it forward. So that is like the two way. And when you can balance that, you will feel like confident. You will feel like you are respected to ask something and then give back to someone who needs that. And that is how I balance from like the very first lessons from my So again, this is all about observing and reflecting on like small gesture of people around you and also maybe from yourself. That is my lesson. And that is how I can draw some experience for myself and for my leadership journey.
Yeah. To me, that is not small at all. You know, as you say,
Yep.
to be able to notice, to be able to give and making time to write.
Yep.
It's quite different from writing an email and bulk email to everyone. It's very different. So,
Yes.
and I think it's a very powerful gesture that, what your mother has done and actually also passed on to you. So, and we are learning here all together. So thank you for the sharing. And linked to the question about how we can impact and how we can have more compassion, and noticing, having this kind of sense of appreciation. What do you think that everyone, what do you think that we can do better? Practically help, women support each other in more intentional or sustaining way. What do you think that we can do better? What should we do?
Yeah. I think that nowadays we heard about more frequently about the terms co-creation. I mean, like previously when we people do research, it's often like about research for something, research about something. It changed now. It should be like research with and for something, meaning like the participant of the research should be the co-producer of knowledge. And this is the same when we are working with women, with young people, with marginalized groups. We get them engaged in the process, create a sense of belonging for them into that work, and then making them feel like they are contributing to develop the work. So the sense of belonging is very important, and it can also like empower us to be more proactive in our work because that is our own work, right? That we play a proactive role rather than just like a very passive role. And because we are our own boss, we have to create, we have to think creatively and then co-produce with other to have like more solution for our own problem. Because at the end of the day, that is for our own benefit. So I think that to help women, empower women, women are empowered. This is all about the debate, participation, and this is all about the co-creation. So I'm happy that like in the program for women entrepreneurs, for example, in my work, you participated in that event, right? The Women's Entrepreneurship Community Vietnam, the WCV. And this network was initiated and co-led by our alumni. So all the activities have been done by their choice, not by our order. And then because of that, they feel connected to the community. Of course, not everyone feel that, but most of them feel that. They feel like that is their own network, that is their own community, and they have to support each other to make that network grow. And I think it is very important to give them the opportunity to co-create with us. Co-creation is for everyone.
Yeah. Now, absolutely, like you're talking about co-creation, co-designing, but self-leadership, as we mentioned before, is really looking into how to connect deeper with, of course, ourselves, how to build the bridge to build that community and
Yep.
co-creating that community. So
Yep.
that's absolutely wonderful. And because you have so many words of wisdom today, I want to ask you about an advice. What kind of advice would you offer to younger people, men and women who are still trying to understand, figure out, who they are today and what they're going and where they're going? And what kind of advice would you like to give them, for those people who are still looking for themselves where they want to go?
Yeah, I think that I want to share with them one quote. I am not what happened to me. I am what I chose to become. That is my advice for young people. Because for me, that quote speaks to the power of choice and transformation. When we have to rise above the circumstances, when we choose to become what we want to be, not by chance, but by choice, with intention and with purpose. So again, it is about stepping inward, asking what we want to achieve in our own life and what is the most meaningful moment for us. It can be changing along the way, but for each stage of life, choose the most meaningful moment that you want to see in that stage of life. And this will help you to navigate all challenges, to balance multiple roles in the life, because life is always changing, and we have to identify the anchor for us
Mm,
by keeping asking us who or what we choose to become.
yeah, yeah. So there's a lot of choice and there's a lot of
Yeah,
intention, as as you
yeah,
mentioned today. So
yeah.
that's wonderful. So, and the last question that I wanted to ask. So you know that the podcast is called Mosaic Mind Podcast. So we have a mind full of mosaic shining pieces everywhere. And I like to ask an advice from you. So if someone wants to develop that mosaic mind, which makes sense when you put them together, like cultures, ideas, ways of thinking, what would be one tip or habit that you would recommend that they start with, to have that kind of mosaic mind which makes sense of things which are floating everywhere?
So again, this is about choice. This is about the priority, because on our journey we can come across with different minds, different perceptions, different cultures, different backgrounds, and how to pick the most one that align with our own values will be helpful for us to create our own network of minds. So I have been engaged in a network of many experts in many fields. And then for each field, we have like a lot of names of scholars, of practitioners, of leaders. But how we can like reach out to all of them, because this is like hundreds, this is thousands of names in that network, just like the minds and the culture and the background. How we can align everything to benefit us in our growth journey. We need to know what is our priority and what capacity should we develop to create our own community, and then empower us to be more confident. Back to the 3 C's that I mentioned before,
Mm.
to create like inclusive learning for each of us and also for everyone. The capacity, the community, and the confidence.
That's wonderful. And so we talked a lot about things today, but I think that we talked from, I'm taking some notes here, from the power of intention, of choice, to looking inward, the importance of pausing, really reflecting with intention where we want to go and how we want to be. We talked about transformation, transition, confidence, belonging, right? Community, and absolutely, the sense of community that you mentioned before when you have that platform for the women to co-create that community. And I love what you have said as well. And actually, with the story of your mother, It's really that the other people felt that they are being seen. And I absolutely love that piece of wisdom, is because when we are too busy, we don't stop and we don't see. And the message of your mother is, stop and see and notice people. So that's a leadership takeaway from a wise woman that we are learning today. So I really, really, really wanted to thank you for your time today. And I think that people can connect with you because we're going to put your contact details, on the descriptions of the podcast, so they can contact with you directly if you want to know more about your work on climate change. And yes, I forgot about also, the climate crisis and the women. So see you with so many topics today.
For me, this conversation is also a chance for reflection and for restoration. I look forward to another opportunity to meet you in person or online and then hear more about your work. But
Yeah,
the series of your podcast, I think they're very meaningful for many people because it's look at leadership, it's look at women's life and also our lived experience in different angles.
absolutely.
And this is exactly like aligned with the title of your podcast series. So congratulations and thank you for the opportunity.